He has established a worldwide reputation for his exceptional record of accurately predicting the future of technological change and its direct impact on the business world. He is a strategic advisor to executives from Fortune 500 companies, handpicked by LinkedIn as one of their first influencers, now with over 1 million global followers, given over 3,000 keynote speeches, and is the author of 7 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Flash Foresight, and his latest bestseller, The Anticipatory Organization. Burrus is a highly innovative entrepreneur who has founded 6 businesses, 4 of which were national leaders in the first year. He has been referred to by the New York Times as one of the top 3 business gurus in the highest demand. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Daniel Burrus.
All right. Thank you for joining. I have Google Fiber right to this location, and some of you may have read about how Google has been having some outages recently around the world, and I had a split-second outage just before this got started. So if I disappear, my guess is I'll be right back. So hang in there. Hopefully I won't disappear. So as we draw to the end of this year, and boy, what a year 2020 was. Holy cow. We've got 2021 right ahead of us, and there is light at the end of that tunnel. And of course, referring to a number of vaccines that are coming out that will help tremendously. And I think, just given how that's being rolled out, and of course, all the disinformation that's out there, probably we will start to see some good upticks in reality starting this summer. But in the meantime, there is opportunity everywhere. And to find it, we need to be thinking multidimensionally. We need to be thinking exponentially. And that's what the subject is for this webinar. And as I have always done in these open webinars, I want to leave plenty of time for you to ask me questions about anything that you would like. So if you get some ideas for some questions, please type them in down below, and then I can have Jennifer read them for me, and I'll give you an answer. Or remember, we can go live and have you raise your hand at the bottom, and then we'll just turn on your mic, and you can turn on your mic, and we can all hear you, and I can talk to you, which, by the way, I like a lot because I like the interface. Let me also just say that I'm really grateful for all of you, because you are important to me. I mean, these open webinars, I have never done any of this before March. Everything I did was through my corporate work and my business work, and I've been enjoying this interface, so I hope you have as well. Also, I hope you've been staying healthy and doing well, you and the family, and wish you that for the new year coming up. Okay, back on exponential. Just think about exponential in terms of how it grows, and then I want to apply it to our thinking. And in my book, Flash Foresight, I used a penny example. So if you take 1 penny and you apply exponential, which is doubling, because if it's not exponential, you lay 1 penny down, another penny down, another penny down, another penny down, and in the course of a month, you'd end up with, if it's 31 days, you'd end up with 31 cents. But when you have exponential, you lay a penny down, the next day you've got 2, the next day you've got 4, the next day you've got 8. So at the end of a week, you'd have a little over $81. Big deal. But hey, if you look at day 28, you'd have $1 million. If you look at day 30, you'd have 5 million. And if you look at day 31, you'd have $10 million just from that penny and exponential. So exponential, as I've always liked to say, it does not create a graph like this. It really does create that hockey stick looking graph. And those of you that have attended my deep dive last month, which is of course part of my anticipatory leader learning system, hope you decide to get into that if you're not, I talked about the pandemic acceleration beyond exponential of those trends. And I'm giving you a heads up, sometime in the beginning of the new year, I'm going to have an ebook on the exponential acceleration of opportunities that is coming from those trends. So we'll keep you posted on that. I want you to just give you a heads up. couple of other things on the exponential list, and that is I love the phrase that a good friend of mine, DeWitt Jones, came up with back in the 90s, but it fits this thinking, this multidimensional thinking, exponential thinking. And that is, there's more than one right answer. So when you are a linear thinker, when you're a one-dimensional thinker, it's either this or that. And those of you that have been in my learning system, read my books, I'm sure a lot of you have, you know that I talk about it's not either this or that, it's this and that. And so that's beginning to get you to think beyond that one-dimensional into another dimension. And we'll get into 2 and 3 and 4-dimensional thinking in a few minutes. So, what DeWitt said is there's more than one right answer. And I really like that, because typically we come up with an answer and it can be delivered as the answer. But the answer for me may be a different answer for you, because you have all of the things and the variables in your head that impact you and whatever you're trying to do, which are different than all the variables and things that are in my head impacting me. So that's where you want more than one right answer. So when somebody comes up with an answer, says, good, that's a right answer. What are some other ones? And typically we look in the same place when we're doing linear thinking. But exponential thinking, as well as multidimensional thinking, involves looking in different directions. And once again, those of you that have been in the anticipatory leader learning system have really learned how opposites work better, which is another way of seeing another dimension, because you're looking at in a completely different view. So let me give you a couple of other ways of thinking about that exponential thinking. That is the growth of a company or a growth of an organization, or maybe your business. And typically you have a growth. Maybe it's 5% you're growing every year. Maybe it's 10%. You've got some percent of growth, or maybe it's been declining because of the pandemic. Maybe it's been going down by 5%. Maybe it went down 30%. Maybe it's gone down 100%. And you're looking at how can we turn that back around? And that takes, there's usually a graph, whether it's turning it back around or your growth. Think of it this way. But what if that growth rate was an exponential growth rate? What if instead of to get from here to here, which might take 2 or 3 years, what if we did it in 2 or 3 months? Well, regular thinking isn't going to get you there. You're going to have to be coming up with some new right answers. You're going to be having to look in some new avenues and new directions. You've got to be able to think outside of the box on that one. And by the way, speaking of thinking outside of the box, I did mention deep dives. I do have a deep dive coming up this coming Tuesday. Think about that one, because I think it's really a great one. I'm talking about the difference between crisis managers and opportunity managers, and showing how companies large and small have shifted from spending most of their time on, in reality, crisis, and shifted into opportunity, and the dramatic results that did. So if you want to do that next Tuesday, to do the deep dives, it is not an open webinar. Actually, that you have to become part of my anticipatory leader learning system to do a deep dive. I do one every month as part of that system. It is a membership. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the link that we're putting in chat right now, you can see where the link of that is. And if you put in the word opportunity, you can get a 40% discount on membership. Remember, you can cancel anytime, so get in. We've had very few people ever leave once they get in, and we've got thousands and thousands of people in there. So consider that if you're not doing it. Okay, let's talk about 5G and other technologies and apply exponential thinking to it. Let me direct you to something else. Just in the last week, I have done a major new list of technology-driven hard trends. Matter of fact, if you printed it out, it would look like this. And I'm going to encourage you to go to burrus.com/see-the-future, or you can simply, and that'll be in chat as well, and download that. It's free, you can get that. And I think you're going to find some really great opportunities in there by reading through that, because these are hard trends that are not just going exponential, which I already talked to you about the power of, many of them, if not almost all, have been driven beyond exponential because of the pandemic. And of course, why? And that's because we were forced to change back in March and April on a global basis. Everybody, we were forced to go digital. And that forced change caused us to dramatically accelerate the use of these trends that have been in play for quite a long time. So as we're looking at 2021 and 2022, remember that our thinking is not going back to pre-pandemic thinking. It's kind of like, can you remember what life was like before a smartphone, before you got an iPhone or a Samsung or whatever smartphone you're using now? It's kind of hard to even remember. I mean, what did we have? Our coolest thing was a BlackBerry, and we could do emails on it, and that's it. Couldn't take a picture, couldn't do any of that stuff, couldn't look at video. Man, that changed us tremendously, and it wasn't that long ago. Well, at this point, because the pandemic is around so long, it's kind of hard to even remember pre-pandemic. Matter of fact, if you're looking at any movies or binging on Netflix, a friend of mine said, well, I've seen all of them at Netflix now. I binged on the whole thing. Anyway, if you've been doing that kind of thing, you're experiencing part of that digital world that we've been forced into because we aren't going to restaurants and bars and things as much as we did before. That's why Netflix is going up so big, and others are starting to get into the show as well. All right, coming back to thinking exponentially, in that report, in that 25, you'll see 5G mentioned. And we're really just start getting, now I'm here in San Diego right now, and many of you have seen this background before. By the way, this is not a picture. As you can see, this is actually a live, real background I've got. And in looking at 5G in San Diego right here, I have 5G. In most major cities, we have 5G. It starts in a dense city and then goes out. And this is globally as well. So 5G all over the world starts where there's a lot of people, right? Where there's a lot of smartphones to connect to it. And then it goes out from there. And in that report, you'll see that Elon Musk and SpaceX is putting up all of these real small little satellites all around the planet to bring high-speed bandwidth to rural, to anywhere. And that's happening. It's happening right now. In other words, within the next couple of years, we're going to have 2 billion new people on the internet. Most of them will be doing it through a smartphone, and you can make smartphones extremely inexpensively today, the same as a dumb phone in terms of cost at this point in time. That could increase what you do and what you're trying to do at a new exponential level, because that's a lot of people in just a short amount of time. What would you do with that? Because we know it's happening. We know it's going to happen. Or coming back to 5G, when you think linear with 5G, what you do is you take a look at your smartphone and you think, oh, cool. It can be, if you've got 5G, there's a couple different flavors of it. You could get 100 times faster Wi-Fi. Wow, I could download a movie even faster. But that's one-dimensional thinking. If you think exponentially, and if you think multidimensionally, you do a little bit more reading, a little bit more look into what is 5G really? What does it do? And what you can find out is actually there are some great benefits. And one of them is, this is a business one, you can get a private 5G network that's super fast, very low latency, and it also can be used for connecting millions of things. Because one of the big benefits, in other words, now we're seeing more dimensions to this 5G thing, is the ability to connect all these different, we call them things, but whether it is a digital alarm clock, whether it's your smart watch, whether it is concrete that is cracking in a bridge, whether it is, and you can make anything, you fill in the blank, it could be anything that can be smart walls, smart floors, smart parking meters. You can make it, and we're in the process of making everything smart. Well, that's 5G enables you to connect them. So with a private 5G network, now this wouldn't be so good for a 2 or 3 person company, but if you've got a big company, that can be a huge advantage because that gives you ultra high bandwidth everywhere and and low latency everywhere. And you can put it and make all of your things really intelligent, all the stuff that you have working. So there are companies, I've written a blog about this. If you go to burrus.com, check out about 4 blogs ago, I talked about 5G and examples of companies that were dramatically accelerating growth by putting in a private 5G network. Wow, didn't even know you could do a private 5G network. Well, now you do. Not to mention the fact that you ask yourself, what does that ultra low latency do? And what would 100 times faster do as we build 5G out from the cities going out? Because you don't have it yet, you will. What does it mean to Wi-Fi? Hey, it's faster than your current Wi-Fi. In other words, do we need Wi-Fi? And the answer is many of us aren't going to use Wi-Fi. We're going to use cell. So what could I predict? I'm showing you how I think about predicting. What could I easily predict? Well, if I can get an iPad or a Apple Watch or some other watch that has cell in it. It's not 5G right now, but it predictably will be in the next iteration. Why can't my laptop have cell? And why wouldn't I want my laptop to have cell instead of just Wi-Fi? Well, security for one, much faster speeds for another, and they're going to be rolling it out in a way because it will be big to get the cost down so you don't have to worry about data. As a matter of fact, many plans that we have right now with our cell phones don't even charge us for data. Some do, some don't, but the use of data is becoming not the barrier, it's having the speed and what service do you want to get where you have good coverage. Again, 5G is a game changer. So instead of just, it's going to give me faster speeds and better downloads for my movies, think about augmented reality, another thing in my little list. And the fact that we know Apple will be coming out with soon augmented reality glasses. By the way, who else will be? Predicted. Samsung, sure, and other competitors. So you don't have to have the hardware. They're already coming out with the hardware. What's the problem? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? So that's where you start thinking, I know that's a future fact. It's going to be growing at an exponential rate. So I got to apply exponential thinking so I can profit exponentially from that if I want to tap into AR glasses and 5G as it's coming and giving us all that speed and low latency. How might I use that in my business? Whether it's a service business, whether you're a consultant, whether you're an accountant, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a designer, how might you use it to communicate, to collaborate, to innovate, and to drive growth? Think bigger about it. All right, so I just brought up another exponential thinking tool. Think bigger. A few of you might have heard me say this in the past, but let me bring it to the forefront now because it helps you think exponentially. And that is, think big and then realize you just thought small. There's a bigger big. So I want to be thinking the bigger big. But here's the key. You can't think exponentially, multidimensionally, the bigger big until you define the big. It's like looking at you're climbing a mountain and you're looking at the top and you know where your goal is and you start climbing up the side of the mountain and you get about halfway up and you see a bigger peak. In other words, that wasn't the top. I couldn't see the real top from the bottom. There's a bigger peak. That's the one I really want. But you could have never seen it had you not gotten that high. In that same way, I want you to develop your best plan, and a one-dimensional, two-dimensional thinker, that's the plan, and we work it. But when we think multidimensionally, we step back and say, all right, we've got the best plan. All right, we're set. This is it. This is the plan. All right, now how do we render it obsolete? How do we think beyond it? How do we go way beyond that? How do we take it by 10x or 20x or 100x? And when you do that, you force yourself to come up with transformational ideas rather than just ideas that involve change. And it's what my experience is when you do that thinking bigger, it's actually easier. The bigger big, I like to call it, is easier to do than the big. The big was busy. A lot of parts, a lot of pieces, took a lot of time. Thinking bigger is about how to skip a lot of that time. Again, a lot of the things that I cover in the learning system. So, how do I skip this? How do I skip that? How can I move that forward? Am I just looking at, is there more than one right answer? Is there a better answer? I can remember working with some of the largest drug companies who are being highlighted quite a bit as we're putting out new vaccines, and got them to think bigger. And how do we think bigger in rolling out a COVID vaccine? Of course, there's more than one. That's because we are not operating in series, we are operating in parallel. And how do you develop it faster than anyone else? Well, again, I've done a lot of work with drug companies and developers of vaccines like that, those very companies. So the answer is we can't do it in series. We have to do it in parallel. So here's how all drugs were developed before these new ones that were done very quickly. So how do we do it fast? Well, we're going to have to do multidimensional thinking. We had to think exponentially. And how do you do that? Well, in developing a drug, you have step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's all these steps along the way, and that takes years. But we don't have years. We got people dying. So how do we make it faster? And that is, we don't operate in series. We operate in parallel. So we do some things at the same time that we're doing the others. So we start planning, since this is about a drug for a pandemic that's global in size and massive, we're going to need a lot of vials. So what do we start doing? Ordering the vials now, in the beginning. And you might say, wait a minute, you don't even know if you got a drug that works yet. But remember, we also have a tool that's on my list, and that's AI, machine learning, and that can create a digital twin of a human. So we can have a human functioning body, except it's a digital human function body, and we can test all the drugs on that and see how it works, which is even faster and better results than using a mouse or something else. But by the way, it's a both and world. We'll use a mouse and some of those other animals as well. So AI helped accelerate dramatically. Do working in parallel help working dramatically. And what if I order 1 billion vials and we go along the way and it turns out that our drug isn't working? Guess what? There's another company that does have a drug that's working that is going to need a lot of vials. We'll sell them to them. So there's a way to make things happen faster. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of smart people in drug companies that have been doing the series way of thinking since the dawn of time. But we were forced to think what? Exponentially. How can we exponentially shorten time? Because that's exponential as well, in the opposite direction. Instead of it being longer and bigger, it's shorter and smaller. How do we think multidimensionally? Do things in parallel. So let me bring this to you and your planning for 2021 now. Your personal planning, your business planning. Are you thinking in series? I've got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to do this. Or are you thinking in parallel? And that is, there's a bunch of things I want to do in 2021 and 2022 I'd like to accomplish. I don't know if I can accomplish them all, because if I work in series, I may never get them done. How can I work in parallel efficiently? And you might think, well, that'll just stack them all up and I'll have no time to be with my family, with my kids, and have a life. But that's where you transform the process of how you do what you do. You think differently about that. You think exponentially, you think multidimensional about that. And ask yourself, if I'm going to work in parallel with all the things I want to do in 2021 and have them stack up and still have a life, I have to do what I do in a very different way. I've got to transform my own personal processes. I've got to apply there's more than one right answer, and I've been doing what I do the way I've done it for a long time. And I'm a pro. Yeah, well, is that the right answer? Or is that just a right answer that has worked for you up till now? Is there a better right answer for you going forward? One that might get you there faster? Hint, there is. If you don't look for it, you don't find it. So I want us to make sure that we look for it and find it. So I want us to think big and then realize you thought too small. I want you to be looking at the bigger big when you're looking out there. Secondly, and again, you've got to define the big first, have it worked out, and then have you and or your team then challenge it to go to the next level. And I've done that with many different companies, including the people that are developing drugs, and it's helped them get to, wow, look at what we did when we actually took what we were about to do, the big, and went bigger big, and it became something really huge. So multidimensional thinking, not one dimension. There's more than one right answer. Think bigger big. If you're not doing something exponentially, it's going to take you way too long. You're going to get bogged down. And again, look at, since I built a lot of this into the learning system, if you're not already in there, go to that, attend the deep dive on Tuesday. I do one every month, as well as we have the learning system with all the 28 lessons. And we have a forum in there to communicate and collaborate with other people. So there's a lot of great tools. Check that out. You can find it in chat. All right. You know what I want to do is I want to open this up. I could do more, but I want to get your questions so I can help you with thinking multidimensionally, exponentially with your actual issues. So I'm going to switch to the question and answer time right now. Let's go for it. Jennifer, do we have any?
We do. We have a live question from Glenn. Glenn, go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Glenn.
I'm doing well, and you?
Doing really good. Thank you.
Okay, I want to focus on your commentary about the 5G, and I'm thinking that this increased speed is going to definitely be incredibly beneficial. Healthcare is one avenue, and also the architectural engineering construction industry is another. So my question is, what are your thoughts on those particular sectors, or what other industries are going to be the first and the biggest users and beneficiaries of 5G?
Well, thank you, Glenn. Again, I just did a big report on that. And for you, Glenn, as well as others, you can go to burrus.com, click on the blog section. And because I've written literally thousands of articles, I mean, it's amazing. I amazed myself. How did I do that? Anyway, there's a search function. And if you put in 5G, you'll get the articles I've written about 5G, and you'll be able to find it. So that's how you can find things on the blog. So you'll find some good ones in there as examples. A lot of manufacturing companies that are spread out and big, got a private 5G network, and these are all around the world. And by the way, you don't have to be in a city. See, the consumer version of 5G, the business version of 5G, that's the normal one, is the one that is in the city first, and it's being built out from the city. However, you don't have to be in a city waiting for AT&T, or I know we have people from other parts of the world in this webinar. Whatever your major provider is, you don't have to wait for them to bring it to your city or your town when you go with a private 5G network. So mining, manufacturing, construction, large construction. Now we're talking about a major project. Those are ripe for all of that. One of the things to find, and again, to think about where are the 5G opportunities, is to ask you and to think this way. Everything is either a brake or an accelerator that you're touching and working on, or if you look at an industry or a business. Now, what do I mean by that? The accelerator helps you move forward faster. Good to know what that is. The brake, well, that slows you down. There are people that are an accelerator. They always help you speed up. There are people that are a brake. They always bog you down. Good to know, who those people are. Maybe spend a little less time with the ones that slow you down. A little more time with the ones that give you new insights and help you speed up in a positive way. Secondly, within healthcare, where are the bottlenecks? Where are the things that slow down, bog down? Then ask yourself, all right, let's take 5G. Could 5G be an answer for that? How might that play a role here? And you'll start finding some answers. Again, you can find answers when they're asked the right questions. So one way to do it is look for the breaks, those things that are bogging down, slowing down, where we've done it the same way we've always done it. Developing a drug is a perfect example. Nobody's questioned that all these years. Nobody's questioned that. We just do it ding, 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 ding. Instead of, wait a minute, we can work in parallel and get it done a lot faster. And we have new tools now. We have AI. We have all of that. Also, Glenn, think about this, the construction and building and designing. Again, think in terms of brake, accelerator, software, integration, cost, and then apply it to a tool. One of the beautiful things about that list of 25 that I just mentioned to you is don't think in terms of just one tool. Sometimes when you put a tool with another one and another one, you have something really powerful together. There is a game in the United States. Again, we have a global group out there listening right now, which I really appreciate. And there's a game show that's been on for a long time called the Wheel of Fortune. And what they do is they spin this wheel and it goes around. And a lot of time, either it'll have a number on it. If you're in a casino, they have wheels that do that. And you try to bet on the number and hope yours wins. Or it's got a name or something on it and you spin it around, or maybe a prize, how much money you'll get when they spin that Wheel of Fortune around. Let me give you a little different Wheel of Fortune. And that is, what if we put all of the 25 technologies I cover on the wheel? And then what if you pick the subject like engineering and you spin the wheel and it comes around and see what comes up at the top? I'll guarantee you'll come up with an opportunity you didn't think of before. Then spin it again and see what you get. You'll get a different one probably. Now, the odds are you're probably going to get a different one. But don't throw away the first one. Say, how does that second one now impact with that first one regarding the subject I'm focusing on? It's a way for you to help find those new opportunities. All right, let's go to another one.
Question from John. Any plans on setting up an opportunity as a service group?
Oh, I love that, John. Thank you. I know you've been paying attention to my stuff because I've talked about how anything can be a service. So, John, if you are, first of all, if you are part of the Anticipatory Leader membership and leadership membership group, and you're in the learning system, definitely I want you to be listening to the deep dive that's coming up this Tuesday. And I know it's a week of holidays. Luckily, anyone that's in the Anticipatory Leader learning system has access to all of the past ones. You can watch them anytime. I'm going to be getting into in depth, what is an opportunity manager? What does that really mean? And I'm going to be covering all of the different elements of that. So when you start seeing those elements, you could indeed see how you might create an opportunity as a service. And what is opportunity as a service? What is that really? Really talking about identifying opportunities that are currently invisible to you. And it'll lead itself to innovation. By the way, what is innovation? I'm kind of a word definition guy. I think if you can elevate the definition of something, you can come up with much better applications of that word. So what is innovation to me? Applied creativity. All right. So if you are creative, great. You got a creative idea, fine. But when that creativity is applied to something, creating a result, now you have something called innovation. So innovation is applied creativity. I think opportunity management is a way to find where is the opportunity that I want to innovate around. And that's where you can start doing the Wheel of Fortune concept and some other things I talked about. So I like the idea. One last part about opportunity as a service. I think a lot of people have some opportunities they're looking at. Matter of fact, I would suggest, John, and all of you that are listening, you have no shortage of lists of opportunities, right? Most companies have a big list of opportunities. They got a bigger problem, and I'm giving you an idea of how to refine your opportunity as a service idea a little bit further. And that is, the bigger problem is, which opportunity do we do? Where do we place our bets? Because we can't bet on all of them. And which ones can give us a result faster? So the problem that you're trying to solve is not just finding an opportunity. That's why I'm addressing it in my deep dive next week. It's really coming up with, how do I refine it into the right opportunity? And now let's take the subject of this webinar. how do I make it bigger? How do I accelerate it, make it faster? How do I get there faster? How do I make it bigger? Is it just one right answer I came up with? In other words, is that opportunity just the opportunity, or are there more that are related to it and there's one that's far better? All right, I think I helped you with that one. Let's try another one.
Okay, question from Robert. How can companies disrupt their industry by creating a culture that embraces more employees working from home? For example, Oracle moving to Texas.
Right. Well, one of the reasons Oracle is moving to Texas is tax reasons. A lot of companies, because Texas is one of the companies that don't have a state tax. So that, and there are other states that do that, but Texas is one of them. So that's one of the reasons. Secondly, Oracle, like many of the other companies, is realizing that we don't need to necessarily house all employees in a big office or in a big complex. They can be distributed all over the world, thanks to what we've learned since COVID, and that is working remotely can be very effective. Now, with that said, thinking multidimensionally about office work, it isn't an either we're in the office or we're not in the office, either we're going back or we're not going back. It's what the opportunity here is, what is the office in 2021, 22, 23, what are we doing in that office? Because if we're not taking advantage of people being together, why are we in that office? So in Oracle's situation, there are tools and technologies that you can't have in your home and you can't just plug into even with a 5G connection. In that case, you actually have to go to work, maybe not every day, but to be able to apply and use those sophisticated tools. So there's tax reasons. There is moving to Texas for, there's a number of reasons. I won't get into all of them, but are they moving all offices and all people there? Well, actually they're not, because now, just like with any business, you can be distributed. Let me come back to the initial part of your question there, which is corporate culture, and how do you get to disrupt the culture with a new way of thinking? Because maybe the old way of thinking is, if you're not in the office, you're not at work. And we've been forced to be home. We don't like that. And we want to get everybody back in so we can keep an eye on you and make sure you're working. But if you, first of all, get a little evidence and do a little research, you'll see that companies have found that people can be quite productive working out of their homes when they're given the right tools, and when also they're given some guidelines to be able to maximize working at home. The problem when you work at home is you can't go home because home is work and work is home, and how do you separate the two? So it's learning how to separate those things. By the way, one of the tips on that is to have a part of your home that you use for work, and you only use that for work. When you leave that area, you're not at work anymore. That can help. But coming back to changing a culture, that's where certainty comes into play and hard trends come into play. So if you take a look at what are the hard trends around, in the case of your example, working from home or working in the office, what can we see? What are the new opportunities? What are the more than one right answer? It's not just one. And how can we accomplish 10x or 20x in the same amount of time? Is it by doing what we did before, working in the way we did before? Or is there a new way that can get us there faster? Some time spent around that, and especially tying it to the certainty of hard trends, that will allow people to have the confidence to make a bold move and to consider something different. Right now, we're still in this pandemic world that we're in, and there's an advantage to that. Now, again, there's problems, obviously, people dying, obviously, but there's also opportunity. And one of the big opportunities for us all right now is leaving people a little more open-minded at all levels to new ways of thinking and new ways of acting and new ways of doing what we do. Take advantage of that, because that's one of the advantages the pandemic has. All right, let's have a few more.
Okay, question from Mark. How can small businesses, $5 million or less, be assisted to reinvent their enterprise for sustainable growth and profitability other than joining the deep dive?
Oh yeah, there are many. First of all, I think part of it is, and by the way, the deep dives I'm doing once a month. Let me just define that just for a minute, and then I'm going to give you way beyond that. So the deep dives are part of my anticipatory leader system. And I've created a membership system out of that where, you know, you can either pay by the month or by the year, and you can leave at any time. And so it's that kind of a thing, rather than, you know, you have this bigger fee that you pay and then you bought it and you can use it for a year or something like that. And what you're getting out of that is you're getting 28 lessons, you're getting tools, you're getting resources, and you're getting the monthly deep dive. So it's not all about the deep dive. It's an entire system that has truly transformed many, many companies. If you go to, again, go to Burrus.com, click on anticipatory organization, and just scroll down and click on a couple of the videos of testimonials of companies that have done it. You'll see, wow, it's far more than a deep dive. But let's go to what you're really asking me, and that is, other than that, Dan, other than what you're providing, what can I do? And what I would suggest is, and I covered this a little bit in Opportunity Manager in my deep dive coming up, and that is, look where you aren't looking. For example, in your smaller company, you have an industry, you have a business you're in, and there's probably a major association that represents that business that you're in. You may be, or maybe some of your people are members of that association, and you attend their national conference so that you can learn new things because they have vendors and people that come in. And in 2020, probably did that virtually if it was after March. Now, what is your opportunity to think exponentially and do what I'm talking about other than the deep dive in my learning system? And that is, take a look at related but different industries and what they're doing and what's happening at their conferences. By the way, they have virtual conferences as well. Attend things that are outside of where you normally look so that you can see new things, related areas. Maybe you have a component of what you do that has, I'll bet there's an association around that, and that component could be a service or a product that is part of what you do. Well, there's a whole association around that have vendors and all this stuff, and they're talking about all innovations in that, around that one thing. That may give you an idea to reinvent what you do. So what I'm talking about is looking outside of your box that you've created, and Google can help you do some searches on that as well. Okay, let me have another one.
Okay, question from Catherine. I recently attended one of your virtual keynote speeches, and you talked about the pandemic acceleration of hard trends. Do you see another wave of pandemic acceleration given this next round of shutdowns and stay-at-home orders? In other words, will these numbers continue to move exponentially?
Good question. I have 16 technology-driven hard trends that were dramatically accelerated by the pandemic. And again, I covered that in one of my previous deep dives, and it'll be part of an ebook coming out at the beginning of the year. And by the way, I have forecasts for each one of those as well. So, you know, check that out. So we have many of these. An example, of course, is remote working, like we've just been talking about, which was accelerated about 8 years. I mean, we could work remote before, but the pandemic forced us to work remote, and now we've learned some things, and we're not going back. We're going forward, and by the way, we're going back to the office. But that was one example. What's happening just with that particular example as the pandemic continues, because it isn't a switch that just is turned on and off, and we've got a little road to hoe as we go through this. So will those numbers even get bigger? In other words, will it, instead of it is accelerated by 8 years, it'll be accelerated beyond that? A little bit, but not much more beyond that, because that's a tremendous acceleration that was caused by the people that were, you know, all of us being locked in. Here's what'll make it accelerate. And that is things like 5G and some of the other technologies that are on my list of 25 that are just starting to come into play. So as we get our virtual reality, and we get some new virtual reality tools for remote working, so that I can be at the construction site by putting on my new Oculus. And now I'm at the construction site and I can walk through it. I can walk with you. I can walk with other people. By the way, I've done this kind of thing. And it looks three-dimensional and real. And I can see whatever part I want, and I can move things around, and I can try and I can experiment. You'll start to see working from home will, once again, that number will go up. When we start using augmented glasses and start using those, wow, that will change working from home. The number will go up. So there's some things that will accelerate each one of those 16. At first, they're not going to go up real fast because they've already gone up super fast in just a short amount of time. So we've already got that acceleration. They're going to start going up, though, again, because we have some new tools just coming into play that will further accelerate those accelerations. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's all going very quickly. When you have technologies as major as, let's say, remote education, telehealth, e-commerce, we tend to go back to our one-dimensional thinking. For example, with Amazon and e-commerce accelerated by 10 years because we were forced to lock down. We might be thinking, boy, retail is in trouble. But actually, what we're doing is we're going to reinvent retail with all these new tools and reinvent the experience of brick and mortar retail and have it work with e-commerce in a new way that's far beyond what we called omni marketing, where we have different ways of bringing it all together in one experience. We're transforming that whole thing. That, of course, what it does is, again, accelerates it. So all of those are going to continue to be accelerated. The big acceleration happened in 2020. We're going to get another shot in the arm, not a vaccine, shot in the arm of new tech in that list of 25 that is going to further accelerate, but it'll take another month or two before we get another big jolt. Okay, how about another one?
Okay, question from Evan. Can you talk more about edge computing and how that works with the Internet of Things?
Yeah, edge computing is really a major element. And so up until recently, computing all happened at the mothership. Think of it that way, meaning back when it was in the 80s and 90s, it was all in the big, computer systems that we had with the green screen and the flashing light, and you had to go to work to use it, and you couldn't use a laptop or anything like that. And then as technology advanced, we started having servers, and then we had the cloud, and now we've got Wi-Fi. So all of that stuff is going up to the mothership in the cloud right now, for the most part. Or you've got a virtual private network, and it's going to your server at your office because they haven't fully gone to the cloud yet. I notice I made the word yet in there. So what the edge is it's saying not everything needs to be processed at the edge. Not all the data needs to come back at the edge. We need to look at where is the action happening. For example, I've been driving a Model X Tesla since 2016. By the way, I really like it. And that is a mobile, it's like an iPhone with wheels. In other words, it's creating amazing amounts of data, lots of data. And a lot of that data is, of course, it's connected to the mothership, which is Tesla. And that data is going back to the mothership. But there's a lot of things that need to happen on board. So if I'm going to be doing, let's say, autonomous driving and making it really good, I need a little supercomputer and some AI on me because I'm at the edge. I'm where the action is. I'm the car. And there are things that have to happen very quickly that I don't have time to get back to Tesla and have Tesla get back to me to take action because there was a kid in the that I couldn't see because there was a snowstorm and I was driving, but there's a human in the way up ahead and I need to be able to stop. I need to have that happen at the edge. I'm at the edge in this case, in my vehicle. So I need some processing taking place and some actions taking place right there. And by the way, all data maybe doesn't have to go back to Tesla. Maybe there's a lot of things that can happen within Tesla, within my car, that don't need to go back. There's another thing. When you send something out and back, there is a delay. Even with 5G, you still get delay. The farther it goes out, there's still a time. But the more instantaneous things can happen, the better. Well, this is true with the Internet of Things, where I've got a machine that is sensing a breakdown about to happen, and they can order the part, and they can order the guy who's going to come in and install it before it breaks down. And all of that stuff can go up above. But at the edge, there can be some things that we can build in with some self-healing and some self-repair that we need to have happen immediately right now. And again, now we're at the edge. We're at the edge, meaning where the problem is, where the machine is, and where the servers end up going up in the cloud. That's quite a ways away. There's a little bit of a lag time. So if I can eliminate lag time, if I can not send all data back to have it processed, that's called the edge. As a matter of fact, you are at the edge when you're using your laptop. You're at the edge. And and when you're working online, all of it's going up, but there's things that happen right there. So there are some laptops that do not have a hard drive and everything goes up. There, of course, the one you have a hard drive, or of course a flash drive, or whatever you want to call it. There's maybe not a moving part in there anymore, but that's where you're storing data right on your machine, and your machine is doing its own processing. That's at the edge because it's the edge of you using it. Your phone is, a lot of things are happening right there. And some of it may need to go back to the mothership. If it's Apple, or if it's some other one. Some of it doesn't have to go back to the mothership. So deciding what is the advantage, and the advantage is usually speed, processing, making decisions in real time, avoiding issues, solving problems in real time, all of that kind of thing, all of that happens at the edge. And when you talk about the things, the Internet of Things, that it becomes even more important. So that's why so the edge is, we can do a lot of processing and a lot of storage and and have a lot of action taking place where everything is actually, where the action is. Think of it that way. Okay, we're getting to the close to the end of our time. I'll take a couple more questions. Remember, by the way, they got the deep dive, which is really part of the learning system. You got to join that to be in there. Find out about that. You can check in chat to find out how to do that. I think you'd really like it. Remember, you can go in. If you don't like it, you can leave. I mean, you can go in for a month and see how you like it. I think you'll get enough value out of that. It's worth the experiment. We'll let you know about the next open webinar that we'll do, and we'll give you a heads up on that. And in blogs, what we've been doing is, of course, sending out my my blog, and then we have that information in there. Make sure you're checking. Do we have another question we can take? Maybe a couple more before we wind this one up.
We do a question from Carolyn. What is the best way for me to determine what processes I need to automate? Where do I start? Oh,
great question, Carolyn. The most redundant are the ones that you automate. So the things that you do over and over and over again, it's repeated. See, those are the easiest things to automate. I mean, even if you look at Microsoft Word, there are some functions that we maybe do on a, we do this, we go from this text to that text, remove that block around. And so what Microsoft has done with Microsoft Word is they've created some shortcuts to automate it so that you can hit two keys together, and that does what a whole bunch of other mouse strokes would have done in the past. By the way, that is automation. So ask yourself, where are we doing routine tasks? And also, if you look at applying AI, and one of the things you'll find in my list of 25 is AI as a service, which means you don't have to own the service. You can tap into AI, even with a small company of 5 million or less, by the way, and use AI tools because it's being offered as a service, and you can innovate around that and apply around that, definitely. So with that said, what are the lower level functions that you do on a regular basis in your business that would be far better served if it was done in an automated way, or maybe AI can do it, freeing me to do something else? For example, let's talk about voice commerce. which means chatbots like a Alexa or a Siri, but it doesn't have to be in a phone or in a speaker. It can be embedded in anything, which is actually what's happening. You put it in anything, which is opportunity. So if we did that and put that in and used it for help desk. So I've got a question. I go to the website with my question, or I make a phone call to get an answer because I got a problem with that new thing I bought or that new gift I got at Christmas or whatever it might be. I can wait for a human, or I can have AI answer the question, because let's face it, there's probably 30 to 40% of the questions that help desks get is the same question over and over again. And they just got to the human has to give the same answer. So you could have AI giving you the answer, automating that part. And then when it's a question that, or the answer is more sophisticated and need a human, the chatbot will say, that one's beyond my scope. Let me give you the human. We'll connect you right away. And now you got the human answering the thing that the human does best. Another example of automation, repeat over and over stuff, like asking the same question all the time. Okay, we're at the getting close. You know what? I got time for one more quick one. Let's just do one more. Yeah, as you can tell, I like to help you all. Let's do one more here.
Yep, quick one for you. What is the #1 book you read on innovation other than your own?
Wow, #1 book I read on innovation. I don't know if I have read ever a single book on the subject of innovation. Rather, what I do is read books and read research and read things that allow me to get stimulated to use my creativity to turn it into an innovation. Remember, innovation is applied creativity. So a book specifically on innovation, and by the way, there are books on innovation. What I've done is concentrate more on the things that stimulate me to be an innovator. Could be because I'm kind of a natural born innovator and been doing it in the 6 companies I've started, and have done quite a bit going way, way, way back in my life. So that's an area I'm already pretty good in. But there are good books on innovation. So I can't help you with that one. I haven't picked up that specific subject to read, but what I like to do is to stimulate myself with reading outside of in fields, as well as, that's why I like to look at new technologies. That's why a lot of the things that I do on LinkedIn and others is giving you some new technologies that have come out to stimulate you, to help you innovate by using your natural creativity to say, hey, wait, I think we can make use of that. All right, let's wind this up now by saying I want you to have happy holidays. Also, keep yourself safe, stay healthy, and remember to not think in a linear way, think in an exponential way, think in a parallel way, and don't apply just series, but apply parallel and make 2 to 4 becomes 8 so that you can get to that 10 million by the time you're using that penny at the end of the month. All right, take care and thank you all.